They were watching, controlling, manipulating, and you never knew. Behind closed doors, in offices lined with files stamped top secret, the FBI quietly pulled the strings through a program called COINTELPRO. Created in 1956 under the relentless leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, it targeted ordinary citizens who challenged authority or worked to change society. Civil rights leaders, anti-war protesters, and community organizers became targets of a shadowy campaign that operated entirely in secret. The Bureau didn't just watch, they manipulated. Agents infiltrated meetings to spread rumors, forge letters, and create internal conflicts. One of the most infamous targets was Martin Luther King Jr. The FBI used constant surveillance and psychological pressure to try and undermine him. Dossiers were built on personal lives, family connections, and social networks, then weaponized to destabilize entire movements from within. Media outlets were manipulated to make leaders appear dangerous. What looked like organic scandal was often the result of deliberate FBI interference. Operations were compartmentalized, creating a nearly invisible network of control, a shadow government operating within a government. By the 1960s, COINTELPRO had expanded to nearly every group deemed radical, seeking to influence outcomes and shape national narratives. Control was achieved without physical force, through the careful orchestration of fear and the systematic manufacturing of paranoia. The FBI rewrote reality for its targets, creating situations designed to weaken and destroy movements that threatened the status quo. The human cost was enormous. Families were torn apart, and movements that might have changed history were dismantled in the shadows. Decades later, the echoes of these techniques, strategic leaks and media influence, remain in modern surveillance and social media campaigns. In 1971, a break-in at a small FBI office in Pennsylvania finally cracked the wall of secrecy, exposing the program to the world. The Church Committee hearings of 1975 revealed the full scope of these operations, shocking the American public with their audacity. Citizens learned that an agency meant to protect them had been working in the shadows to destabilize entire communities and erode trust. COINTELPRO is a warning about unchecked authority and how invisible manipulation can undermine freedom without leaving a trace. The story of COINTELPRO is about human lives and the invisible forces that steer history from the shadows. It reminds us that truth can be hidden, and the line between protection and oppression is often dangerously thin. Vigilance is necessary to protect liberty from power that operates without accountability. The quiet war may have ended, but its lessons remain, because history often hides its most important truths in shadows. It is a quiet war, fought against the very citizens it was meant to serve. In a democracy, power without accountability can quietly become absolute, and someone is always watching.
By the early 1970s, the veil of secrecy surrounding COINTELPRO was beginning to unravel. What operated in the shadows could no longer stay hidden. Leaks, whistleblowers, and investigative journalists began to uncover the true scope of the FBI's domestic counterintelligence operations. The revelations were shocking. Ordinary citizens learned that their government had actively intervened in the lives of activists and communities. Meetings had been infiltrated by undercover agents. Internal disputes were deliberately inflamed, and trust was carefully dismantled. Public outrage grew as the depth of COINTELPRO became apparent. Congressional hearings were convened to investigate the Bureau. Former FBI agents testified under oath, revealing covert operations once considered routine. Ethical and legal questions dominated the nation. Who would be held accountable for targeting ordinary Americans exercising their constitutional rights? How could this happen without oversight? Despite the exposure, the shadow of COINTELPRO lingered. Many operations left no tangible trace, but the damage was profound. Leaders were discredited, memberships dwindled, and trust among activists had been eroded. The psychological manipulation persisted long after. COINTELPRO was more than surveillance. It was strategic psychological warfare. Agents studied human behavior to exert influence subtly. Every interaction was calculated to create ripple effects. By targeting relationships, the program could destabilize groups without ever appearing to act. Activists were forced to navigate a landscape of suspicion. Leaders were undermined by subtle interventions that created internal divisions. Communities once united found themselves fractured, unsure of whom to trust. The impact was psychological, social, and political. Infiltration was a powerful tool. Agents posed as members, gaining confidence while subtly prompting arguments that would escalate naturally. Anonymous communications were forged to create paranoia. A member might receive a note claiming another was an informant. These small acts, repeated strategically, created a culture of doubt and mistrust that dismantled organizations from within. Media manipulation amplified the disruption. Journalists were provided with selective information designed to misrepresent targeted groups. Even truthful information was framed out of context. Supporters began to doubt the cause, adding external pressure to internal instability. Timing was critical. Interventions were released during leadership votes or public demonstrations to maximize the impact of disruption. Investigations and audits forced groups to focus on bureaucratic defense rather than activism, slowing progress without public outrage. Psychologically, the effects were devastating. Activists experienced constant stress and uncertainty. Many left their work altogether. As journalists pieced together the magnitude of the program, its systemic nature became undeniable. Thousands had been surveilled. The congressional hearings were a turning point. Public perception shifted as citizens grappled with their government's betrayal of democracy. Even after the program ended, its legacy endured. Trust between citizens and authorities was permanently diminished. COINTELPRO revealed how intelligence could be weaponized domestically, affecting social cohesion without direct force. Modern scholars reference it as a case study in covert influence. It serves as a cautionary tale of power exercised without accountability. Small interventions created major consequences. A single rumor could isolate a leader and erode confidence for generations. The program's history is a stark reminder that democracy requires transparency and vigilance in protecting our civil liberties. COINTELPRO illustrates the invisible machinery of influence. Its history is a guidepost for understanding the balance of power today. The precipice. We must ensure the shadows of the past do not become the blueprint for our future.